Good morning, guys. Back with another video, another restoration. So this customer actually took his headlights out of the vehicle. So I've obviously got it in the back of the car. We're gonna go ahead and do it here. This is a really big pain when the customer has the headlights out, because whenever you're sitting, there's no counter force, so it can kind of wobble and everything. So this is out of a Volvo SUV. You can see the clear coat and everything is still entirely intact over here, but right here on the top it's starting to oxidize, and the same thing on this side. So we'll go ahead and get that knocked out. So let's do it. Alright guys, so you can still see right here where the clear coat's still intact. You have to make sure you get all of that out before you move on. So see, it's still all right here, and obviously over here on the side I still have to do. Alright guys, so it's completely ready for spray. All that clear coat's off and everything. So I'm just going to do one at a time. I'm going to spray this one first, call it a day, put it on top of the car so it'll dry, and then I'll move on to the next one. Because the last thing I want is for the customer to take the headlights and end up touching it while it's wet. So. You can see it's still super wet on the bottom where I sprayed it, so we'll just get a little bit of time, just let it sit in the sun, and it'll dry up nice. Alright guys, so that one I just sprayed. You can still see it's pretty foggy because it's still pretty wet. This one is pretty much dry on the right side, but you can see right here it's not nearly as dry because the sun's primarily hitting that side. So this is one reason why it's kind of skeptical to do headlights out of the vehicle, because I mean, I can hand these off to the customer and tell them, you know, be careful, and something could still happen while they're wet. So that's why it's always sketchy doing them outside of the vehicle. So other than that, I think he'll be happy. They look much better. Alright guys, so we just left the client's work. He had brought the headlights with him to work so that I could do them there, and I have to say it is such a pain to do headlights outside of the vehicle. So future reference, whenever you're in the business and you have a customer explain that the headlights are outside the vehicle, charge them extra. It is it is such a pain. So the reason why I say, there's two different reasons why I tell you to charge extra. One, that job took me about 45 minutes, which normally takes me about 30 minutes or less. I pretty much have it down to about maybe 15-20 minutes. So in the amount of time that I had done those headlights, I could have went on to another one. So that's one reason why you should charge extra if the headlights are out of the vehicle. Another reason is because the job is much more prone to accidents when the headlight is out of the vehicle, and I'll explain. So you saw me spray the headlight in the back of the trunk, in the back of the hatch, and there's a bunch of things that could have went wrong. It could have fell. I could have accidentally touched it with a rag. I had to put them on the roof of the car because that's where the sunlight was at. I parked under a tree because I wanted some shade. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and it's already 85 degrees and climbing. So whenever I put them on the roof of the car, it's even more prone for accidents. A leaf could have fell from the tree and smack dab right onto the sticky lens. A bug could have gotten the lens. It could have fell off of the car. So it's such a pain to do headlights outside of the vehicle. You can do it, it's money, but just make sure you kind of give them a disclaimer, say, hey, this isn't obviously normal. Usually the vehicles, the headlights are in the vehicle. And another thing, there's no counterforce when it comes to sanding on the lens outside the vehicle. So as I was sanding, I had to hold it really, really tight to make sure that I was getting a thorough sand, and it's just kind of a pain. So we're on to the next client's residence. I think it's a Honda CR-V. So we got about 6 jobs on the docket today, and that one kind of messed my stuff up. So another tip, whenever you're scheduling your headlight restorations, give your customer a time frame on when you'll be there. So when I tell my customers, because the earliest I usually do is around 8:30, so when I tell my customers what time I'll be there, I usually say between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. So I always tell them in between, because whenever you go to a customer's or client's house to do a job, and they could have severe oxidation to where you're there for about 30 minutes, or they can have light little hazing. So you always kind of want to expect the worst case scenario. That way you're more prone to being on time. So a few tips: charge extra if the headlight is outside of the vehicle, and when you're scheduling, give yourself a 30-minute window, saying I'll be there in between this time and that time. So all right guys, on to the next.